During winter break, my childhood friends secretly canceled my train ticket, causing me to miss my grandmother's funeral. I confronted him for an explanation, but he replied lazily, "Emily, I'm in a relationship now. Can you please have some boundaries? There are so many trains, yet you still insisted on buying a ticket for the same one as mine. You'll make Nina overthink." Later, just as he wanted, I stopped taking the same train as him and stopped sending him any messages. But then he cornered me downstairs in front of my dorm, his eyes red. "Why didn't you go back with me when the new semester started?" I pushed him away, smiled at a senior not far behind me, then turned back to him and said, "I'm in a relationship. Can you have some boundaries?" At the high-speed rail check-in gate, I was stopped. The machine said there was no record of my ticket. Panicking, I hurried to the staff with my ID. While they were checking, I received a call from my childhood friend, Evan Foster. His voice was casual. "Emily, look up." I looked up in confusion and saw Evan, already past security, waving at me from the waiting hall. Beside him was a pink suitcase, definitely in the style of his girlfriend, Nina Zhou, but she wasn't there. Before I could speak, he continued, "Are you checking your ticket record?" I froze. "How do you know?" Evan let out a small, helpless laugh. "Don't bother checking, I already canceled your ticket." It felt like I had been struck by lightning. I stood there stunned for a long moment before I finally found my voice. "Hello? Why?" Evan, now a department manager, answered carelessly. "Emily, haven't I told you this before? Nina gets jealous so easily. Every time you show up, she gets upset for no reason. I'm taking her home to meet my parents this break. If she sees you riding the same train again, she'll definitely throw a fit." "So you canceled my ticket?" My voice trembled uncontrollably. "Just last night, my mom called and said my grandmother had suddenly fallen, had been rushed into the ICU, and might never wake up. She told me to come home to see her one last time. Tickets for winter break were almost impossible to get. The one he canceled was the only ticket I had managed to secure." Evan sounded completely justified. "Yeah. And Emily, I know you've relied on me since we were kids, but things aren't the same anymore. I'm in a relationship. You need to have some boundaries, okay?" Through the crowd, I saw Evan raise his brows at me. "All right, I'm hanging up. Nina's almost done in the restroom. Don't waste time just standing there. I'll book a ride for you. Go back to school first." Right then, I heard a girl's sweet voice beside him. "Evan, who are you talking to?" He chuckled softly. "No one, just a spam call." Then his voice lowered, carrying a warning. "Hurry up and leave. Don't let Nina see you." I opened my mouth to speak. "Evan, my grandmother." But before I could finish, the call ended abruptly with a busy tone. I lowered my head, staring at the backpack on top of my suitcase. The 10 tiny crocheted charms my grandmother had made for me swayed gently. My fingers trembled as I opened the ticket booking page, silently praying I could somehow grab a leftover seat. But there were none. Not a single ticket left. Tears burst out instantly. The staff member handed back my ID. "I'm sorry, but we couldn't find any record of your ticket. Is there anything else I can help you with?" I took my ID and wiped my tears with the back of my hand. I shook my head. "No more." When I looked up, I happened to see the two of them in the waiting hall, Evan dragging his suitcase with one hand and holding Nina's hand with the other as they chatted and laughed on their way toward the check-in gate. The announcement for boarding echoed through the hall. Almost at the same time, my mom called. "Emily, once Nana gets off the bus, she doesn't need to go to the hospital anymore. We've already brought your grandma home. She's getting IV nutrition and waiting for you to come back." It took me 2 more days before I managed to get a train ticket back to South City. A senior from my hometown gave me his seat, but even so, I still didn't make it in time to see my grandmother one last time. At the South City station, the moment I stepped outside, I saw Evan waiting for me. He was dressed in a black suit, clearly having just rushed over from the funeral. When he saw me, his gaze flickered evasively. "Emily." "I didn't know she." My palm landed hard across his face before he could finish. His head snapped to the side. His skin was fair, and it didn't take long for 5 distinct red fingerprints to appear. He pressed his tongue against the inside of his cheek but didn't get angry. He only looked at me in silence. Suddenly, my wrist was yanked forcefully from behind, and the next second, I was shoved straight toward the road. Nina yelled at me. Emily, what's wrong with you? Evan's been running around, taking care of everything at the funeral, helping your parents entertain guests, and he didn't sleep at all last night. If you're not grateful, fine, but how dare you hit him? Her voice clashed with the piercing blare of a horn. A taxi screeched to a stop, barely half a meter in front of me. The driver leaned out and yelled, "Are you crazy? Trying to get yourself killed?" I froze, staring at the tiny stretch of space between me and the car, my hands and feet turning ice cold. Nina still looked like she wanted to keep scolding me, but Evan stepped in front of her. "Enough, Nina. That's enough." Nina pouted, letting out a spoiled little humph, but didn't say anything else. Evan grabbed my arm and pulled me back. "I really didn't know your grandmother was in the hospital. Otherwise, how could I have canceled your ticket? What's the point now?" My thoughts snapped back into place. I cut him off, my voice hoarse, and looked up at him with eyes burning with furious tears. The guilt on Evan's face only made me feel even more disgusted, but I didn't have the strength to argue with him anymore. I pulled my arm out of his grip, turned around, and dragged my suitcase toward the car. He tried to stop me again. I glanced at the sleeve he had touched and said coldly, "Your girlfriend is standing right there. Can you have some boundaries?" Only then did Evan seem to come back to his senses and turn to look at Nina behind him. Her eyes were red, like she had suffered some huge grievance but was forcing herself to act understanding. With a trembling voice, she said, "It's okay. I get it." I acted as if I hadn't heard her at all and got into the car. No one spoke. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I lowered the window, and the damp, cold air made me feel a little better. But the next second, I heard Nina's soft, delicate voice from the front seat. "Evan, I feel a bit cold. Can we?" She suddenly changed her tone. "Never mind. Emily's upset right now. I understand. Just leave it open." But right after she said that, she began coughing lightly. Evan's eyes filled with worry for her. He tried cautiously, "Emily, Nina's a bit sick. Maybe we should." Before he could finish, I rolled the window back up. Through the rearview mirror, he looked at me. Evan let out a long sigh. He used to do that every time he thought I was being unreasonable. Back then, I would always argue with him, refuse to back down. But now, I didn't even want to say a single extra word to him. I put on my headphones and turned to watch the scenery flying past outside the window. What played in my ears was a voice message my grandmother had sent me before she passed. "Emily, when winter break comes, have Evan come over too. Grandma will make those beef buns you both love. Emily, how much longer until your break? Grandma already finished knitting the winter scarves and gloves for you and Evan." Every Emily she called me in that message felt like a needle piercing straight into my chest, countless little wounds piling on top of each other, painful enough to make it hard to breathe. Tears burst out and fell onto my phone screen. I could have seen her one last time. She had looked forward to me coming home so much. But now, whenever I return home on break, I'll never again see that tiny old lady waiting eagerly for me by the door. On the day of her burial, I bought her favorite cream cake. She always thought it was too expensive and never wanted to eat it. She would only buy it when Evan and I were home from school. I used to tell her over the phone, "Once I start making money, I'll buy you lots and lots of cream cakes." But she never got to wait for that day. Standing in front of the bakery window, my eyes grew wet again. The girl behind the counter greeted me warmly. "Great choice. This is our best-selling cake. It's only morning and several customers already reserved it. This one's the last one for today." I pointed at the cake, my voice hoarse. "I'll take it." Almost at the same time, a familiar sweet voice rang out beside me. "Evan, this cake is so cute. I want it. Can you buy it for me?" Nina was pointing at the exact same cake I was. I turned and met her eyes. The clerk smiled apologetically at Nina. "I'm sorry, miss. This is the last one, and this lady has already claimed it." Before Nina could speak, Evan, who had been standing beside her, head down texting, looked up and immediately cut in. "Sell it to us. I'll pay twice the price." Nina smirked triumphantly when she heard that, then turned to the clerk. "You heard him. My boyfriend said he'll pay double." The clerk looked at me helplessly and asked if I was willing to give it up. I shook my head. "No." Hearing my voice, Evan looked up from his phone. The moment he recognized me, he instinctively tried to persuade me. Emily, we both live in South City. You can buy cake anytime. Nina's leaving in a few days. Just let her have it. I'd already expected something like this, but it still hurt sharply. Not for myself, but for my grandma. When we were little, both my parents and Evan's parents worked out of town and only came home for the holidays. I lived with my grandmother, and Evan lived with his grandfather. But Evan's mother had remarried, and he wasn't his grandfather's biological grandson. His grandfather didn't treat him well. Sometimes he wouldn't even give him food. One winter, when I saw Evan being kicked out of the house and left shivering outside in the cold, I brought him home. My grandma reheated the leftover buns from the day for him. She said he was a pitiful child and told him that if he ever had no food, he should come to our house. After that, Evan came to eat at my grandma's almost every day, at first for dinner, then eventually for all 3 meals. Grandma even knitted matching winter sets for both of us every year. During every holiday, Grandma would prepare 2 red envelopes. Whatever she gave me, she gave Evan too. In her heart, she had already thought of him as her real grandson. But I never expected that he would forget even her 7th-day memorial, and forget her favorite cream cake. I turned to look at Evan, and said each word slowly and clearly, "Today is my grandma's 7th-day memorial. This was her favorite cake when she was alive. Evan, if you have even a little bit of conscience left, don't fight me for it." His expression froze instantly, as if something suddenly came to mind. He hurriedly pulled out his phone again and opened his notes, like he wanted to prove something to me. He held the screen in front of me. "Emily, I didn't forget. I remember everything. Look." I pushed his hand away and turned around, asking the clerk to pack the cake for me. She handed me the boxed cake, and I took it, ready to leave. But Evan grabbed my wrist. "Emily, just look, I really didn't forget." I shook off his hand impatiently. "Evan, let me go." He tightened his grip. "I won't. Just look at it, look, and I'll let go." I didn't want to get stuck arguing with him. I just wanted to go to the cemetery and talk to my grandma. My eyes flicked across his phone screen. His notes did have the date of Grandma's 7th-day memorial written down. My voice was faint. "I saw it. Now can you let go?" Evan's eyes were slightly red as he spoke quickly. "I'll go to the cemetery with you." But right then, Nina stepped forward and spoke in a trembling, tearful voice. "Evan, I'm leaving in a few days. Didn't you promise to take me to the ocean park? You even bought the tickets." A look of hesitation flashed across Evan's face. He glanced at me, then at Nina, clearly torn between us. I took the opportunity to pull free, grabbed the cake, and walked away quickly. I flagged down a taxi by the roadside. Just as I was about to get in, Evan ran over and slammed the door shut. He yanked me back, and the sudden force made the cake slip from my hands. It hit the ground with a dull thud and splattered into a mess. Evan's voice rang in my ear. "Emily, you can't be this selfish. Your grandma was my grandma too. I said I'm going with you." I stared at the ruined cake, vision instantly blurring with tears. When I lifted my head, tears streamed down my cheeks. Evan froze. He stammered, I didn't mean to." I wrenched my arm out of his grip and slapped him with all the strength I had. "Evan Foster, what do you want from me? Because of you, I didn't get to see my grandma one last time, and now you even want to take away my right to buy her a cake. What do you want?" Before he could respond, Nina suddenly rushed over. She stepped in front of Evan and slapped me hard across the face. "Emily, what the hell do you think you are? What gives you the right to keep hitting Evan again and again?" Her slap stunned me. My left ear went deaf for a moment, followed by a sharp ringing. It took several seconds before I could breathe normally again. I raised my hand to strike back, but Evan grabbed my wrist. His eyes were red at the corners, and his voice carried cold impatience and irritation. "Enough, Emily. How long are you going to cause trouble? Your grandma is already dead. What difference does it make, even if you bring that cake?" Evan snapped. "Can't you be rational for once? Nina has already given in to you again and again. Don't be so unreasonable." After saying that, he took Nina's hand and turned to leave. I stood where I was as the cold wind lifted my hair. The taxi driver lowered the window and asked, "Are you still getting in?" I wiped my tears, opened the door, and got into the car. "Let's go." From that moment on, Evan and I would have nothing to do with each other ever again. Light snow drifted down, settling softly onto the tombstone. When the flakes melted, droplets slid down the cold marble surface like tears that couldn't be wiped away. I sat beside my grandma's grave and quietly told her how much I missed her. "Grandma, they sold out of cream cake today. Next time I come, I'll definitely buy one for you." A gentle breeze brushed past, the shadows of the trees swaying, almost as if Grandma were wiping away my tears. That old lady of mine, she could never stand seeing me cry. Every time I cried, she would hurt more than I did. I thought back to when I first started college. It was my first time leaving her, going all the way north to North City. Grandma grabbed Evan's hand and kept reminding him, "Evan, when you get to North City, you have to take good care of Emily. She's soft-hearted and easily bullied. You're the older brother, so I'm entrusting her to you." Maybe she was afraid I would get homesick and cry. So she tried to lighten the mood by copying some silly memes she'd seen online. She patted Evan on the shoulder and said, "Take good care of Emily, and when you two come home, Grandma will make beef buns for you." Evan laughed as he accepted this mission and promised very seriously, "Don't worry, Grandma. Even if you didn't remind me, I know I need to look after Emily." And at first, he really did take care of me, down to every little detail. Our roommates and classmates would tease me, saying I had a 24/7 on-call boyfriend. It sounded like a joke, but it hit right at the heart of the crush I'd been hiding for years. I liked Evan. Ever since my feelings first began to bloom, I'd kept him tucked secretly in my heart. On my 20th birthday, with my roommates cheering me on, I confessed to him. He rejected me. He said we knew each other too well, that we were only suited to be like siblings, not lovers. Later, when he started dating Nina, I, being a girl too, naturally understood what girlfriends tend to care about in a relationship. So from the moment I found out Evan was in love, I deliberately kept my distance. But campus was small, and no matter how much I avoided him, we would still run into each other. Every time we did, Evan would act just like he used to, pinching my cheek out of habit, messing up my hair. If I dodged, he would pull me into his arms, holding me tightly so I couldn't escape, and introduce me to Nina with a laugh as his little childhood sweetheart. I would always smile awkwardly and explain that we were just neighbors, not even close enough to call childhood sweethearts. I thought I was doing well. I forced down years of feelings, backed away until I was barely even a friend, took the initiative to draw clear lines, and never once crossed them. Until one day, I went to deliver the winter set Grandma had knitted for Evan, only to walk in on him and Nina in the middle of a fight. Nina mentioned my name. She blamed every coincidence, every accidental encounter between Evan and me, on me deliberately orchestrating it. She said I pretended to withdraw just to win sympathy, that I was scheming and manipulative. When I heard those words, I wanted to explain. But I also felt there was no point explaining. Everything I said would only make it sound worse. Just as I picked up the bag and was about to leave, Nina saw me. She rushed over, yanked me hard by the arm, and tore the bag out of my hand. She threw the scarf my grandmother had crocheted onto the ground and stomped on it, pointing at me as she cursed and called me a homewrecker. I shoved her away and quickly bent down to pick up the scarf. I hadn't meant to cry, but I could never shake the habit of tearing up whenever I got emotional. Before I could even say a word in my defense, Evan cut me off. His voice was cold, filled with annoyance. "Emily, I know you have feelings for me, but can you stop using all these tricks to manufacture coincidences?" He pointed at the scarf in my hands, looking helpless. "And stop using your grandma as an excuse to look for me. I'm in a relationship. Can you have some dignity? Stop forcing Nina to be the bad guy." After that day, I never looked for him again. All the things Grandma kept mailing to me piled up in my dorm room like a mountain. I never delivered them to him. But this time really had been an accident. That ticket had just happened to be available at the right moment. But in Evan's eyes, it was still all part of some scheme. Without asking a single question, he refunded it. If he had just asked me once, maybe I could have made it in time to see Grandma one last time. Before, because Grandma was old, I didn't dare tell her about the grievances in my heart. I swallowed everything down silently. But now things were different. Grandma was gone. She would never again feel sad or worried because of me, and I no longer needed to mind anyone else's feelings or tiptoe around things. Evan and Nina being together had nothing to do with me. Why should I hide or avoid anything for people and things unrelated to me? I am who I am. Time had been silently carrying Evan and me down two opposite paths, pushing us farther and farther apart. So no matter what the future looks like, I will live at my own pace. Once that thought settled in, my mood lightened a little. I gathered my messy emotions and prepared to head home. Just as I stood up, I met the gaze of someone who had suddenly risen from in front of the opposite tombstone. Emily Song? The man across from me looked surprised. I was startled too. When he gave me his train ticket back then, I had told him I'd treat him to a meal once school started. He laughed and tried to make things light, telling me not to wait until the semester began. What if we run into each other back home during the break? He joked. I never thought those words would actually come true. Miles' heart smiled at me, but when he noticed my reddened eyes, the smile faded. Your grandmother. I'm sorry. I just didn't expect to run into you so suddenly. I was surprised. I wiped my tears and shook my head with a small smile. The dead have passed. The people still alive have to live well. That was something Grandma taught me a long time ago. It's okay. I'm surprised too. I looked at Miles in his black coat and asked, Who are you visiting, Miles? A faint sadness flickered across his face. My mom. She passed away a few years ago from a brain tumor. He let out a small sigh and forced a smile. But it's all right. I've made peace with it. I hope you'll be able to as well. I nodded, just about to speak when he suddenly crouched down. I blinked in confusion. A few seconds later, he stood up again, now holding a cream cake in his hands. I heard you mention cream cake earlier. I swear, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Miles rubbed the back of his neck. Mostly because it's been way too quiet over here. He lifted the cake slightly. I happened to buy one today. I'll share a piece with your grandma. I accepted it without hesitation. Thank you. He waved a hand. Hey, nothing to thank me for. It just worked out. Hopefully the two of them can look after each other down there. Saying that, Miles stepped around me, insisting on greeting my grandma. He was incredibly outgoing. Standing in front of Grandma's tombstone, he could chatter endlessly. I stood beside him, listening. Ma'am, don't worry down there. Even though I've only met Emily twice, I already treat her like a friend. Once we're back at school, I'll make sure to look after her for you. My heart jolted unexpectedly. I looked up, and my eyes met his right at that moment. The last time he had given me his ticket, I had been too overwhelmed to even look at his face. But now, in this sudden direct glance, I finally saw him clearly. Handsome, clean features, and the slight curve of a man's eyes that felt like a rare bit of winter sunshine. We had only met twice, yet in those few seconds, I felt as though we both saw a kindred loneliness in each other. I said, It's snowing today? Perfect weather for hot pot. Miles nodded. I was thinking the same thing. At the hot pot restaurant, the server mistakenly assumed we were a couple. The girl was so enthusiastic as she invited us to join their couple's event, 2 free caramel pearl milk teas. I instinctively wanted to explain, but Miles leaned over and whispered, Their caramel milk tea is really good, and it helps with the spice. Seeing me hesitate, the server added with a smile, It's really easy, just take a photo together. Would you like to join? We're pretty busy today, so the drinks are limited. People are strange like that. Originally, I had no intention of participating, but the moment she said limited, I couldn't help wanting to try. We'll join. The server brought out a Polaroid camera and told us to pose sweetly. Miles and I exchanged a look and both laughed, and I immediately blushed and turned my gaze away. Right at that moment, the shutter clicked. The photo printed quickly and the server grinned. Look at this. This handsome guy's eyes are all over his girlfriend's face. You two must have just started dating. You still get shy looking at each other. So sweet. I took the photo, and Miles leaned closer to take a look. He was tall. When he bent down, a warm presence seemed to wrap around me. Above my head came his low, amused voice. Honestly, we look pretty good in this picture. Emily, do you want it? If not, give it to me. I turned around and unexpectedly bumped straight into Miles's solid chest. When I looked up, he lowered his gaze, and our eyes met again. My heartbeat sped up for no reason. Flustered, I shoved the photo into his arms. Here. You can have it. Then I quickly turned to head back to my seat. At that exact moment, a server came over carrying a boiling pot, and we almost collided. Miles reacted instantly, pulling me back sharply. This time, instead of bumping, half of my face ended up pressed right against his chest. Even through his coat, I could hear his heartbeat, fast and heavy. Emily. The next second, a familiar voice shattered the moment between Miles and me. The moment between us was tinged with something almost intimate when suddenly my arm was yanked hard from behind. If Miles hadn't steadied me, I would have fallen straight off the steps. Evan glared at me with a dark expression, pointing at Miles, anger leaking into his voice. Emily, don't you think you owe me an explanation about who he is? Miles didn't understand what was happening, but he instinctively pulled me behind him, standing like a wall between Evan and me. And who exactly are you? He shot back. Why should she explain anything to you? Evan froze, as if even he wasn't sure how to answer that. Was he supposed to call himself my brother? But we weren't related by blood, and on top of that, he had personally told me, just to appease Nina, that we weren't even close enough to count as siblings, that we were at most neighbors. After a few seconds of thinking, he seemed to come up with an answer he thought was perfect. Meeting Miles's eyes, Evan said in a slightly boastful tone, I'm the guy she used to have a crush on. He clearly thought that would be enough to drive Miles away. But Miles didn't budge. Instead, he let out a short laugh, mocking, dismissive. Oh, something from the past, huh? So why are you acting like you're somebody? You don't even qualify as an ex. What right do you have to demand explanations from her? Miles shook his head, incredulous. Man, there really are all kinds of idiots in this world. And that girl behind you, that's your girlfriend, right? Try acting like a decent human being for 5 minutes. Eating from one bowl while staring at the pot, guys like you ruin the reputation of all men. Evan's face twisted with embarrassment. Nina, standing behind him, tugged desperately at his sleeve. Evan. But he jerked her hand off violently, as if he'd completely lost his mind. Get away from me. Nina flinched at his shout, tears spilling down her cheeks. But Evan didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed only on me, burning with something between anger, frustration, and something else I couldn't place. Emily, he said, voice tight, I promised your grandma I'd take care of you. She's only been gone a few days, and you're already going out eating with strangers? And hugging them? What's your relationship with him? Come on, we're going home. I honestly had no idea what was going on in Evan's head. He was the one who told me we needed boundaries, and now he refused to let go. My voice turned cold as ice. Don't bring up my grandma. You don't deserve to. Who the hell do you think you are? What right do you have to control me? Yes, I used to like you, but that's all in the past. And the moment you refunded my ticket behind my back, whatever was between us ended. The person you are now, just looking at you disgusts me. From childhood until now, I had never once spoken harshly to Evan. I knew the things his grandfather used to call him, cruel, degrading words, so I had always protected his dignity as carefully as I could. A young person's pride is fragile and precious, but as the saying goes, the pitiful often have something hateful in them. It wasn't entirely wrong. Evan's eyes reddened, his voice cracking. It's not like that, I didn't know. The moment he said, I didn't know, my anger surged again. My voice rose without my permission. You didn't know, so you thought you could just refund my ticket. Who the hell do you think you are, Evan? What do you take yourself for? Just because you're in a relationship, the whole world has to revolve around you? And I'm supposed to just accept missing my grandma's last moments? My breath shook as years of hurt spilled out. Back when freshman year started, what did my grandma tell you? Did you do it? When you were little, when you had nowhere to go, when you were like a stray dog with nothing to eat and nothing to wear, who was it that took you into their home? And who steamed buns for you, sewed your clothes, and knitted your scarves? Evan, don't you dare use my grandma to excuse yourself. And don't you dare use I didn't know as a shield, because you don't deserve to. And I blame myself too, for pitying someone who should never have been pitied. Every word pierced into him like a knife. The color drained from Evan's face bit by bit, until by the time he turned to leave, he was practically staggering. Nina shot me a vicious glare. Emily, you're really heartless. You have no idea how sad Evan was after your grandma passed away. Because of her death, he even postponed bringing me to meet his parents. Tonight, he was supposed to bring me here for hot pot. But thanks to you, our plans got ruined again. Emily, why do you cling to him like a ghost? You're pathetic. I almost laughed. Sad? I truly didn't see it. Evan hadn't posted anything on social media, sure, but Nina posted every single day. They spent their days sightseeing all over South City, taking photos in every alley, tasting foods from every street vendor, snapping sweet couple selfies at every tourist spot. Was that what sadness looked like? When Nina turned to chase after Evan, I called out. She stopped, confused, and looked back. I raised my hand and slapped her hard across the face. Nina held her cheek, outrage flaring. Emily, you dared hit me? She didn't even finish before I grabbed a cup from the table and flung the hot tea at her. She screamed as the scalding water hit her, tea leaves sticking to her perfectly done makeup, making her look ridiculous. The watching crowd's stares burned her with humiliation. Outside, Evan had already stopped a taxi and was preparing to leave. Afraid she wouldn't catch up to him, Nina didn't bother arguing with me anymore. She ran after him in tears. Once they were gone, all the strength drained out of me at once. I collapsed into the chair, letting out a bitter laugh as I looked at Miles. Sorry, Miles, you had to see that mess. But his focus was somewhere else entirely. He pulled a few tissues, took my hand, and opened my palm. A sharp streak of red had appeared there, the wound I'd scratched open earlier, trying to hold my tears back. Miles asked the server for antiseptic and bandages, then carefully cleaned the cut. As he applied the bandage, he softened his voice. I didn't think it was a mess at all. Honestly, I thought you were pretty badass. When he lifted his head and met my eyes, I saw something warm and aching in his gaze. Emily, he said quietly. I mean it. You were really cool. In that moment, the tears I'd been holding back finally broke free. I sniffled and stammered, but I'm stupid, aren't I? If I didn't, Miles shook his head firmly, cutting me off. Being kind isn't a flaw. Loving the wrong person isn't your fault. As long as you have the courage to start again, nothing will be a problem. That night, I learned another life lesson, another new piece of wisdom to follow the ones Grandma had taught me. How to love myself. After hot pot, when I got home, I saw Evan and Nina downstairs. They were fighting, and once again, I heard my name. Evan, what do you mean you're not taking me to meet your parents anymore? I followed you all the way here from North City. You're telling me now that we're not seeing your parents anymore? What do you take me for? Is it because of Emily? Evan, do you like her? Nina's voice became hysterical. Evan sighed, his eyes full of mixed emotions, regret, resignation, and something he was finally seeing clearly. Yes, he said quietly. I like her. His voice was soft, but it hit Nina so hard, her knees nearly buckled. She stumbled forward 2 steps, almost falling, then let out a laugh that sounded half mad. Evan, you're such a piece of shit. When Emily confessed to you back then, you rejected her. And now that someone else is by her side, you suddenly realize you love her. What am I to you then? A tool to vent your loneliness, or a stepping stone for you to figure out your feelings? The more Nina spoke, the more unhinged she became. By the end, she was screaming curses at him. Evan Foster, people like you, people who use someone's love don't deserve love for the rest of their life. No wonder your grandfather never liked you. You don't fucking deserve to be liked. Honestly, I pity Emily. She wasted 20 years on a piece of trash like you. I bet now, whenever she thinks about how deeply she once loved you, she probably feels sick. Stop shop, Evan snapped, but Nina kept going, crying and laughing at the same time. Why shouldn't I say it? I gave you my first time. I went against my parents to come all the way here with you. For you, I even gave up my exchange student spot. I gave up everything, so why the hell can't I say it? Evan opened his mouth several times, but no words came out. Whatever else could be said, one thing was true. He had genuinely wronged Nina. After she finished venting, Nina wiped her tears harshly with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath, stepped toward Evan, and delivered a full-force slap across his face. Evan Foster, we're done. And remember, I dumped you. I hope you never get Emily's heart for the rest of your life. Evan's head snapped to the side from the impact. He lowered his gaze, and when Nina turned to leave, he whispered, I'm sorry. Nina didn't look back. Instead, her eyes met mine from a distance. She walked up to me, forcing out a twisted smile. Neither of us spoke. She walked past me and I headed toward home. Not far ahead, Evan stood under the apartment building's entrance. He slowly lifted his head and met my eyes. I didn't stop walking. I moved right past him, but he grabbed my arm suddenly. "You heard it." We stood under the street lamp, facing each other. The old, dim light had seen every stage of my history with Evan. When he was a child thrown out by his grandfather, a lonely little boy. After we became friends, he was the teenager who showed up at my grandma's house every day for a warm meal, rain or shine. We had laughed and played under the street lamp. He had helped me and Grandma close up the bun stall under this same light. But South City winters were too cold. The biting wind had blown away every good memory, leaving nothing but clarity, cold, sharp clarity. So clear that even though the same boy was standing right in front of me, I didn't feel even the slightest flutter anymore. I gently said, then I brushed his hand off. A faint glimmer of hope flashed in Evan's eyes as he hesitated. "Then, would you be willing to give me another chance?" I curved my lips slightly, cold and distant as I pulled my hand back. "Didn't you hear what Nina said? In this lifetime, you'll never get my heart again." Evan's eyes turned red instantly. He reached for me anxiously. "Why? Didn't you like me? Didn't you confess to me?" "I don't believe it. I don't believe your feelings for me all these years could disappear so quickly. Emily, please, just give me another chance, okay?" As he spoke, he pulled out a small crocheted charm pouch. I had one exactly like it. During senior year of high school, our class visited South Hill to pray. I secretly made a wish under the Bodhi tree. I wished that in college, Evan and I could have a simple, sweet relationship. I wrote that little girl's dream on a slip of paper, folded it in my palms, and hoped the gods would bless me. When I came home, I told Grandma that secret. She crocheted a small charm pouch for me and told me to put the paper inside. She said that once she was gone, she would watch over me from the sky and help my wishes come true. But the day Evan started dating someone else, I burned that paper. Now my pouch was empty, and I knew Grandma had crocheted one for Evan too, identical to mine. For years we carried them on our keychains, and our classmates even teased us, calling them matching love tokens. Evan frantically opened his pouch. His fingers trembled as he pulled out a yellowed slip of paper and unfolded it. On it was his teenage handwriting. "May all of Emily's wishes come true." His voice shook. I read the note you kept in your pouch once. You wrote that you wanted to have a sweet, simple relationship with me in college. Emily, we can still make that wish come true. Maybe I already liked you back then, I just didn't think it was romantic. I always saw you as a little sister. I thought my feelings were like an older brother's. But now, I cut him off coldly. It doesn't matter anymore. I turned to leave, but Evan rushed after me. "How can it not matter? It can't not matter. Today at the hot pot restaurant, when I saw you with another man, I almost went crazy. You've only ever had me by your side. I never imagined that one day someone else would be there instead. You saw every pathetic moment of my life. I couldn't imagine facing you if we were together. That's why I never let myself think about it." His voice cracked as he choked out. "But today, I realized just how important you are to me. More important than my pride. I just realized it later than you. You can't just sentence me to death because I reacted slowly." I sighed. "It's not a death sentence. I just don't like you anymore. Really, Evan, seeing you cling like this is... Honestly, you have no sense of boundaries." I deliberately emphasized the last 3 words. Evan flinched as if struck. Slowly, he let go of my sleeve. I took advantage of the moment, snatched the charm pouch from his hand, and said, "You don't deserve anything that belonged to my grandma." Then I went upstairs without hesitation. After that night, Evan never came looking for me again. And honestly, I enjoyed the peace. Sometimes I would go out for walks with Miles. The place we visited most was the cemetery, where the people we loved most were resting. On New Year's Eve, my parents, both healthcare workers, were too busy to come home. In past years, Grandma, Evan, and I would make dumplings together. This year, it was just me. After adjusting my mood, I got ready to make dumplings. Even alone, I still had to live well. Following the method Grandma taught me, I started kneading the dough. But no matter what I did, it never turned out like hers. Just then, The doorbell rang. I put down the rolling pin and hurried to the door. Miles Hart stood there holding 2 large bags of New Year groceries, smiling at me from the doorway. "Spending New Year's alone is too lonely. I texted you, but you didn't reply, so I came over. Hope I'm not bothering you." I shook my head and invited him in. "Of course not. I was kneading dough and didn't check my phone." Miles set the bags down, and the moment he heard I was making dough, he immediately shrugged off his coat and rolled up his sleeves like he was about to get to work. He walked to the table, grabbed some flour from the bags, and sprinkled it into the bowl. The dough that had been too sticky just moments ago was kneaded by him a few times and instantly turned into a smooth, workable texture perfect for rolling. His motions were practiced. He had clearly done this many times. I looked at him in surprise. "You know how to knead dough?" Miles rolled out the dough while smiling. "My mom used to love the beef buns from a shop near our place. When she got sick and was hospitalized, she couldn't buy them herself anymore, so I went for her. Later, when her condition worsened, the shop and the hospital were in opposite directions, and the round trip took too long. So I went to the old lady at the bun shop and asked her to teach me. When she was hospitalized, anytime she wanted buns or dumplings, I made them myself. And besides these, I can cook pretty much everything." I interrupted him suddenly. "That bun shop you're talking about, was it Han Han Breakfast?" Miles nodded. "Yeah, it was your grandma's place." For some reason, my eyes instantly grew hot. "So you recognized my grandma long ago?" Miles shook his head. "To be precise, I recognized you first. Back then, when I was learning to make buns at her shop, you would sometimes come by, but you were always glued to Evan's side. You never noticed me, the silent apprentice in the corner. Except once, I was too hot and took off my mask. Your friend beside you said I looked handsome, and you finally glanced at me. But the next second, you said, 'He's okay, I guess. Evan's still better looking.'" Miles mimicked the tone I must have used back then, his expression both amused and exasperated. I couldn't help laughing. "I don't remember that at all. I only remember that a few years ago, Grandma did have an apprentice there. Tall, pretty handsome. But he was like a mute gourd, never said a word, finished his work and left." Miles stared at me with a grin and jerked his head toward me. "Don't just stand there staring. Come wipe my sweat before it drips into the dough." I hopped off the stool, ran to the coffee table to grab a few tissues, then hurried back. Just as I approached, I accidentally tripped on the carpet and lost my balance, falling forward. Miles reacted fast. He wrapped an arm around my waist and shielded the back of my head with his palm, keeping me from crashing onto the marble counter behind him. Our eyes locked, and the air between us heated instantly. Too close, close enough that I couldn't tell whose heartbeat was pounding faster. I scrambled out of his arms, frantically fixing my hair and clothes. Miles coughed twice, clearing his throat before focusing seriously on rolling out the dough again. The living room. The room fell into a strange, quiet, almost intimate tension, a weird, ambiguous atmosphere that lingered until Miles finally called me over to wrap dumplings. Only then did it fade. But every time our hands brushed while shaping the dumpling skins, that strange tension returned again and again. When the dumplings were cooked, the ones I had wrapped, all oddly shaped, had mostly burst open. Miles laughed and scooped all the broken ones into his own bowl, giving me only the perfect ones he had made. As he scooped, he chuckled. "Looks like someone's feelings are leaking out." A meme I'd seen online suddenly popped into my head. How cowards in ambiguous relationships use things like burst dumplings to confess tiny bits of affection. My face burned from the steam as I kept my head lowered. Suddenly, Miles bumped my arm lightly. I looked up and met his bright, smiling eyes. His voice dropped low and he leaned in closer. "Emily," he whispered. "I meant I'm the one leaking feelings." After dinner, I walked Miles downstairs. Snow had begun to fall outside, cold enough to make us both hunch our shoulders. I told him to wait while I ran back upstairs. I went to my room and took out the winter set Grandma had crocheted before she passed. It was originally meant for Evan, but now I wanted to give it to Miles. Back when he learned to make buns from her, Grandma had praised him in front of me, said he was a good filial kid. I figured she wouldn't scold me for giving it to him now. But in the stairwell, I heard the sounds of a scuffle coming from downstairs. I hurried my steps, and the moment I stepped out the building door, I saw Evan land a punch squarely on Miles's face. A surge of anger shot through me. I rushed over and shoved Evan hard, then slapped him across the face. Holding the bag tight, I stepped in front of Miles and shielded him. "Who told you could hit him?" Evan looked at me with hurt written all over his face. Somehow me protecting Miles seemed to hurt him more than the slap. His eyes were red, his whole body shaking like he was on the verge of breaking. He lifted his shirt like a pitiful stray dog begging for compassion. "You hit him? Then who do you think gave me all these bruises? When you didn't come downstairs earlier, he was the one hitting me. He did it on purpose. He wanted you to see this." I stopped checking Miles's injuries and turned toward Evan. Hope flickered in his eyes, only for me to crush it a second later. "So what? Even if he hit you, you deserved it." Evan froze, stunned. I didn't bother wasting more breath on him. I wrapped the scarf around Miles's neck and reached for his hand to pull him away. Under the street lamp, Evan clearly saw the little bear pattern sewn on the scarf, the pattern Grandma had always made specifically for him. His was blue. Mine was pink. But now, that scarf was around Miles's neck. Something snapped in Evan. He lunged forward like he'd gone insane, trying to rip the scarf off. But Miles reacted instantly, kicking him back hard. Evan sprawled onto the ground, twisted in pain as he shouted after me, wild and broken, "That was from your grandma. On what grounds do you give it to someone else?" "That scarf was mine, it was mine." But I held Miles's hand, and we kept walking forward through the swirling wind and snow. Evan's voice grew smaller and smaller until it completely disappeared into the icy wind and swirling snow. And with it, the boy who once helped me and Grandma close up our food stall faded away too. When the new semester started, I arrived with Miles. In front of the girls' dorm, I ran into Nina. She was holding a stack of documents and looked frantic, exhausted, and defeated. My roommate later told me Nina's study abroad application had been rejected. Her advisor had always encouraged her to go overseas, but she gave it up for Evan. Afterward, her advisor recommended the spot to someone else. When she tried to fight for it again, he shut her down, said he didn't trust her judgment anymore. I listened quietly, without adding anything. Nina and I were never really connected. If not for Evan, I probably wouldn't even know her name. Not far away, Miles was waiting for me. He had started an internship, recommended into a great company by his mentor. Tomorrow would be his first day. We planned to celebrate tonight with hot pot. On our way back to campus after dinner, I received a call from Evan's mother. She told me Evan was sick. Apparently he'd caught a cold that night. He waited downstairs at my building. Ever since, he'd been running a fever. His grandfather, who already didn't like him, ignored the whole thing. And for some reason, Evan, who never smoked or drank, had suddenly started doing both. He locked himself in his room, doing nothing but drinking and smoking for half a month. His grandfather only checked on him because he was afraid Evan might die in there and bring bad luck to the house. But when he finally looked in, Evan was truly on the verge of collapsing. His voice was so hoarse he could barely speak, and he looked like an empty shell. On the phone, his mother sighed. "Emily, honey? Auntie knows you have a new life now, but could you maybe?" I cut her off coldly. "Since you know I have a new life, then you shouldn't be calling me. Evan is your son, not mine. Whether he lives or dies is your responsibility, not mine." Then I hung up. In the distance, Miles was calling my name from the roasted sweet potato stand. "Emily, look up." I looked forward and saw him raising a steaming sweet potato in triumph, then turning to point at the chestnut stand beside it. "It's freezing. Go wait inside the milk tea shop. I'll buy you some roasted chestnuts too." I was about to tell him not to. I couldn't eat that much. But he was already in line. Even while waiting, he tucked the sweet potato inside his coat to keep it warm. I couldn't help laughing. Warmth wrapped around me from all directions. Even in the bitter winter cold, I felt nothing but comfort, because I had Grandma's scarf, Miles's roasted sweet potato, and chestnuts waiting for me. I didn't go to the milk tea shop. Instead, I crossed the street and slipped my hands into the pockets of Miles's coat from behind. Startled, he instinctively tried to shake me off, but when he looked down and saw it was me, he quickly interlocked his fingers with mine. "Why'd you come over?" "It's freezing out here." He tugged me gently into his arms as he spoke. Smiling up at him, I said softly, "I wanted to be with you,